Here we go, family. I don't know how many people I'm gonna get up in here, too early, but I'm here. I made it a little late, but I still made it. Better late than never. Because last weekend I was unable to go live, so I just wanted to, tap in with the family real quick, how I normally do, because last weekend I had to move, move out of my old apartment, so I wasn't able to, I was taking care of business, and moving out my apartment, so I wasn't able to go live. So, I just decided to tap in with the family, and go live. It's a little bit later than what I normally go on, but I'm here, so we're gonna talk, and get into some things. I got a lot of, news I want to talk about, news that's, going on, that I felt, relevant to FBA society. So we're gonna walk through and talk about this thing how we normally do, family, and get right into it. So first off I want to talk about vocabulary, family, their speech, up your vocabulary, because truth be told, you're up, up in your vocabulary can, reflect in your life. You might not know. For example, there was a brother, he went from, nothing to something. He went from being homeless and poor. I forget this brother's name. He's a motivational speaker, but he walked himself, into several, big deals. First time, he didn't even have a cleaning service. Someone asked him, something along the lines of, if he had a cleaning service. He said yes. The brother didn't know nothing about cleaning. So, his words was able to open doors for him. He talked his way into a, something that he knew nothing about, and he learned about, the cleaning business on the back end. So what I'm trying to say is, up your vocabulary, you could up, up your speech and your words. You can up your status in life. You ain't got to know everything. You just got to know how to speak and articulate yourself, and you can open up, many doors for yourself, family, just by simply knowing how to speak well and articulate yourself. Many doors are open based off, that. And you might not know everything initially, but you can learn about, what you don't know on the back end. But just, up your speech and vocabulary. This is what I strive to do, family. I'm always, playing around with new words and looking up new words and meanings, because, I love language and vocabulary, speaking and articulating myself, and, I love wordplay in general, because wordplay can have an impact on your life. You can walk yourself into certain situations, where though if you didn't have a voice piece, if you weren't well articulated, certain doors they gonna open for you just based off of that. You can know everything in the world, but if you don't got the right language to be able to ensure that those doors are open for yourself, you ain't gonna walk in yourself into anything. You know what I mean? So up your vocabulary, family, is what I'm trying to say. You can up your status in life. Now moving right along, something else I wanted to talk about, family. I've been seeing a rise, an uptick on, in this situation we're gonna be talking about here on the internet, and that is the mush mouth Negros running around here, like Brother Tariq Nasheed be talking about, that call into his show, often, and just babbling the babble and not saying nothing, but just a bunch of babbling and mush mouthness, don't even know how to really pronounce their words, and most of the stuff they, saying, is not relevant and don't even make sense. Truth be told, I think these people are living in the twilight zone. You got mush mouth Negroes running around here with, the weirdest things they saying in all actuality, such as, Martin Luther King sold our land, the US, Harriet Tubman, was a myth. She didn't exist. Slavery didn't exist. The transatlantic slave trade never took place, which is a bunch of nonsense, discredited, FBA icons and, our prominence and elites, our warrior classes FBAs. I don't rock with that, nor do I co-sign or endorse it. And truth be told, they discredited, FBA icons and, trying to discredit, FBA experiences, the things that we went through, because while I don't agree, with, them saying, everybody came, out of Africa, in regards to us FBAs. There were, certainly a number of us that did come out of Africa, but a lot of us were already here on this land. So you can't dismiss, that the transatlantic slave trade, did happen and take place, but I don't believe it was in, such as large numbers as what they put out. But because we know that black people are already here in America, before then. So, but the transatlantic did take place, and I know this, for certain, because there's a book out my family got, um, my dad's side of the family called From Which We Came, the story of the African American Kensers, how we was, taken from the continent and brought over here, and my family was enslaved on my dad's side down there in South Carolina. And it's a book on that, you know what I mean? While I, I'm not no African, but I certainly acknowledge that, the transatlantic did take place, because we became foundational Black Americans here on this soil, so we had an ethnogenesis, but I'm not going to negate and try to say that, slavery didn't exist, the transatlantic slave trade was made up, people running with this kind of nonsense, it's, truth be told, white supremacists, they like these kind of people because they playing in right to their hand, you know what I mean? White supremacy loves a mushmouth Negro running around talking about slavery didn't exist, the transatlantic slave trade didn't take place, and these are the kind of people that got platforms that are able to get signal boosted and get large platforms, and people following them. And truth be told, the garbage that they spewing don't even make sense. And I question people even following these kinds of people. And then people that's really coming with that FBA empowerment, such as myself and many other brothers and sisters, our platforms get suppressed and censored, when we come up with that real FBA empowerment, talking about reparations and speaking about the injustices and oppression that was done to foundational Black Americans. But Negroes running around and discrediting Martin Luther King and Harriet Tubman, that's a bunch of nonsense, and they feeding into white supremacy. This is why the white supremacists, ain't got no problem with that. In fact, they'll signal boost their messages and, work to suppress and censor ours, on the Black FBA grassroots. So yeah, I just wanted to bring that to the family's attention. The rise in these mushmouth Negroes running around here claiming that Harriet Tubman was made up, Martin Luther King, was an agent, or he sold, our land here in America. Just a bunch of nonsense. And these people ain't got no receipts to back up none of their claims, and making claims that the transatlantic slave trade never existed. While I don't think that it existed in large part of numbers is what they saying, it certainly did exist. And we can't, negate FBA experiences, and for sure as hell, not our icons. So, people running around with that narrative, they feeding into the white supremacist playbook, and they lost in the twilight zone, if you ask me. But moving right along, I ain't got none of the family in here, but that's okay. Maybe they didn't send out the notifications. I told y'all, like, they work to suppress my content on a regular. I put out good videos that shoot up in the algorithm, then all of a sudden it starts, to stop gaining traction, and that's done by design because they don't want powerful, Black empowerment voices such as myself and other brothers and sisters getting out, getting this message out there, a foundational Black American empowerment. So that's why, family, if y'all come and watch my videos, y'all got to be sure to like my content and share my content, because the algorithm works to suppress this kind of content, but to push out the mushmouth niggas talking about slavery didn't exist and discrediting FBA icons, But yeah, moving right along. Um, there was a rare letter of Malcolm X's family when he was talking about, his suspension from the nation and, the JFK assassination. It's sold for upwards of $12,000, and, somebody probably from the dominant white society in all actuality, bought this letter. And I wish, would have went to a foundational Black American museum, such as the Hidden History Museum, because, that's a pertinent piece of FBA history, in that letter right there, and I didn't see too many people talking about that. Our good brother, Malcolm X's letter addressing, him being suspended from the nation, and the comments he made regarding JFK assassination sold for upwards of $12,000. So I just wanted to talk about that and bring it to the forefront and put some light on it. But here we go, family. Let's jump into these videos because I got I was looking up a whole bunch of videos to talk about the family with. So I got a bunch of them here. And first off, we're going to be talking about one of the videos I got, a sister. I don't know where this was at, but a sister, she was, her and her family put out a missing persons report on her sister, her sibling, and come to find out she wasn't never missing. But the authorities, falsely told this sister that her sister, was dead and died of a drug overdose. And they even gave the family a body, which was the wrong body in all actuality. And they actually got, this person who wasn't identifiable, for sure as hell wasn't her sister. They actually got it cremated and mixed it with her mother's ashes that, was actually already dead. So they mixed this person's ashes up. They didn't even know what their mother's ashes. This is a whole bunch of nonsense. And if you ask me, this sister needs to sue the pants off of this police department and the authorities that told her that was her sister. And, and then DNA evidence, later proved, that this person wasn't her relative and her sibling. So in all actuality, she got a hefty lawsuit on her hands because they said her sister died of a drug overdose. Come to find out it didn't happen. And they actually went as far as to, mix this person's ashes with their mother's ashes. So I got the audio and the video of this family, and we're gonna walk through and talk about it. Fair use.
It's a wild, emotional roller coaster.
Shanita Hopkins is trying to make sense of a very unusual situation. In 2021, the family issued a missing persons report for her sister, Shanice Cruz, after she had cut off all communication and seemingly disappeared. Then in April of last year, police informed the family Shanice had been found dead in an empty lot off of Hudson Avenue near Nash Street. The autopsy report showed it was an overdose with high levels of cocaine in the system, not typically what Shanice was involved with.
Reading the autopsy was traumatic. That was...
See, the police was wrong. You know, the authorities was wrong. They told her sister died in a, you know, a lot and died of a drug overdose, which is a bunch of nonsense. The authorities should be held accountable in this. The family of, you know, this sister that's talking, her family got a hefty lawsuit on their hands for saying that, you know, her sister died and it was a bunch of nonsense. And they went as far as, you know, to get this person cremated and mix it with her mother's ashes. That's a bunch of nonsense. They deserve to be held accountable.
It's one thing to hear it, you know what I'm saying? But then it's another thing to actually read it, and then her name is attached to it, so we thinking this is how she died.
Shanita tells me no one was allowed to view the body because it was so badly decomposed, also prompting a swift cremation. The family held a memorial service and funeral last summer. Then in November, Shanita received a shocking message from a person she did not know from Detroit.
The first message is, ma'am, with the picture of my sister, ma'am, I'm concerned. Your sister is not dead. She just volunteered at my event today.
And this is...
See, this type of stuff is scary though, right here, family, because who knows how many times the authorities, you know, had messed up, you know, and just trying to write something off real quick when they got, you know, dead bodies laying on their hands. This is a hefty lawsuit right here, and it makes you think, you know, are they just trying to, you know, hurry up and close cases real quick, you know, without knowing all of the logistics of things? But let's continue.
Just a random message.
Just a random message.
Immediately attempting to get to the bottom of what was going on, Shanita connected with the medical examiner's office where they assured her dental records were a match. She was not convinced, and an investigation got underway.
Peace to my brother RASX. Peace to you, family. And peace to Bam, the super predator. Peace to you, Bam. I'm gonna just call you Bam. But let's continue.
We went the next day. They wanted my youngest sister because her and Shanice has the same mom and dad, and then they wanted her son. So both of them went and they did a DNA test. And when the results came back, they said it wasn't a match. So
this confirming it was not Shanice Cruz. The weight of all that happened continuing to cause emotional distress to the family.
We dealt with the ashes and stuff. We put them in necklaces, and we mixed my mom with this stranger. Yes.
In a statement to News 8 concerning the situation,
See, she mixed the stranger's ashes with her mom's. That's a hefty lawsuit, and, you know, they should be liable for that. You know, the people at the morgue and the authorities who said that her sister was dead and died of a drug overdose. This is a bunch of nonsense. It's scary, truth be told. That's why I wanted to bring this story to the forefront and put some light on it.
County says, quote, the Monroe County Office of the Medical Examiner uses industry standard scientific methods to identify remains of deceased individuals in a timely manner and make appropriate notifications to families. Due to restrictions on the disclosure of information contained in the records of the Office of the Medical Examiner, we are unable to comment on specific cases, end quote. The family is now seeking legal representation.
Yeah.
Sure, they are unable to comment on specific cases because them authorities involved in this case know they done messed up, you know, and they going to get, you know, most likely a hefty lawsuit that they facing. So they don't want to speak out, you know, against this because they know that they messed up.
Yeah, they wanted the ashes back. He did say that, you know, we can compensate you for everything that y'all spent on the memorial, which I said on the cremation and stuff. But when my family was like, no, we need to get a lawyer.
What would you say to your sister right now?
I love her.
Yeah, they need to get a lawyer. This sister right because them compensation, you know, they trying to give out is as little money as possible, but that lawyer will get back that maximum, amount that they can get for this kind of case. So the sister was right in, looking into a lawyer, because this is a certainly a case of stupidity and the part of not lack of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding on the authorities' part for saying that this, her sister was dead. In all actuality, she was alive, and you caused this sister to, mix her this person's ashes, who they don't know who it was, with her mother's ashes. But let's continue.
I've been angry for. I'm still angry. I don't think I'm ever get over the anger, but
I'll be
I
angry
know
too.
how it feels. I'm sorry. I know how it
Nah,
feels to think that she was dead, and that I just want her to know that whatever we had going on, it doesn't even matter. Like, I love her. It's a wild emotional roller.
yeah, yep. But at least that her sister's, alive and doing well, because all the little petty, differences when you think, your family is gone and lost forever, all of them little petty differences and arguments y'all might have, they become minute. So it's best to, put away little differences and arguments that you may have with your family, because you never know, this life that we live in, when, any day could be your last, truth be told. But moving right along, what else I want to touch on? Here we go, family. Pull this up. The hell, something popped up. Here we go, family. So, a white degenerate, is going at police, and he's being unruly, and he's posing a threat. He's resisting arrest. Truth be told, and these white officers, take all of the restraint in the world, and look out for and coddle and pampering this white degenerate, and if it was a black person, if them roles were reversed, then a black person was coming at officers like that, the black person wouldn't even have to come at officers. They would have pulled out their gun and shot him automatically, no questions asked. They'd have been on his ass like white on rice. But we find that in the so-called justice system, there's double standards, racialized standards, I call them, between white people and black people. Most of the times, 9 times out of 10, white people are getting looked out for and coddled and pampered, while black people are held to, a different judging mechanism. They given harsher and steeper punishments, and most of the times black people are shot, from just sitting in a car. They, come up with the weirdest stories. Oh, he was posing a threat, doing this, that, and the other, reaching for your ID. That's considered a threat. Just giving your ID, what you're supposed to do, but they flip and spin that narrative to say that you posing a threat, resisting arrest. And look at how this white boy is handled, family. They taking all the measures in the world to ensure that he's saved, and they're looking out for and coddling and pampering him. In all actuality, they're showing a good amount of restraint with him. And 9 times out of 10, when they dealing with black folks, they already on edge. They grabbing for their gun, on site, and these kinds of measures just aren't taken, when it regards black life. So I don't rock with that, nor do I co-sign or endorse it, because it goes back to racialized standards that exist inside the so-called justice system. And you got these, white school shooters. They make every excuse for them in the world when they run in these schools. Somebody looks at them the wrong way, and they decide to kill up and shoot up a whole bunch of, innocent individuals, and then they come up with excuses for them, like, they were mentally challenged, they had a hard childhood, this, that, and the other, like. And then on the other hand, in the case of our brother Carmelo Anthony, a good straight A student, and just because he black, they want to make it as if, he ain't got the right to defend himself. He was bad since birth, and damn that whole narrative, because it goes back to doubleized racial standards that exist inside the so-called justice system. And we're going to get into this video right here, family, where the police, I just wanted to bring it to the family's attention to show y'all these double racialized standards. And look how the police is looking out for and pampering and coddling this, white male degenerate. In all actuality, he's resisting arrest, and look at the measures they go, take to, ensure that this guy is safe and protected. In fact, they rolled a red carpet out for this damn degenerate. And let's walk through and talk about it, family. Fair use.
6 deployments, 2.5 years to Afghanistan, Iraq.
Look at that.
Still up fucking ass in. You're not doing your fucking job, motherfucker. I did this shit for 20 fucking years. You cannot de-escalate shit because you're stuck in your fucking job. De-escalate, you pussies. De-escalate.
Look, he calling them pussies and everything. You know, if this was a black, you know, male running up on police officers like that, he wouldn't even got the chance to run up on them like that. You know, he's really threatening them, you know, and in fact, he's trying to intimidate, you know, and he's resisting arrest at the end of the day, but they rolling the red carpet out for him and going and taking and making sure every measure to ensure that this guy is looked after and protected.
Amplifying everything. Shut the fuck up, baldy cunt.
He's walking up on him too.
You're talking to someone who has PTSD for combat towards the workers, special operators signed to the Green fucking Berets. We're double.
He's saying he was signed to the Green Berets and he got PTSD. He threatening the officers and subliminally, and they taking every measure to coddle and pamper this damn degenerate. I don't respect this, you know, because Ray Charles could see that this is racial injustice. You know, you ain't a blind person can see that this is racial injustice and double racialized standards in that so-called justice system.
Their fucking record on fucking any weapon caches, and you're challenging me. Get that fucking car out of the ditch. Get the fuck out of here. There's a tow truck and me. You have nothing to do with this. It's not a law enforcement issue.
He telling them what to do, making demands to the police officers. Get the hell back in your car, do this, that, and the other. And half the time, brothers is, you know, shot while sitting in the vehicle, while running away from the scene, retreating from police. These cowardly, you know, race soldiers shoot a brother, you know, in the back, you know, and get off saying that he resisted this, that, and the other. When this guy is clearly posing a threat and he's just being looked out for and coddled and pampered because he's a white man. If this would have been a brother, he'd have been shot dead on the spot. He wouldn't have got, you know, the chance to say and, you know, act out in the way in which he's doing. But let's continue.
Get that fucking car out of the ditch. Get the fuck out of here. There's a tow truck and me.
This is why I go so hard at white supremacy on my channel, family, because it's double standards, it's racialized standards. White supremacy is a welfare system, you know what I mean? Because even the poorest trailer park trash white person, he still got $1 billion worth of whiteness to protect and insulate him, you know. And on the other hand, you know, black people are just stopped 9 times out of 10 and, you know, shot and done, you know, God knows what to by these race soldiers for, you know, none other than driving while being black, which is a bunch of nonsense. And, you know, that's why I push back off the system of racism, white supremacy. This is why I don't give white supremacists no leeway. I'm on their bumper every chance I get. You know, I love exposing white supremacy and bringing it to the forefront and putting it up under the magnifying glass. Brother RASX, they let this dude rant for that long. A black man would have been shot after a few words of taking a step forward towards that cop, shaking my head. Yeah, you know, a brother wouldn't even have got the chance to really step towards that cop. You know, they would have shot him dead on sight. You know, most of the times, brothers is just shot while sitting in the car, driving while black or walking while black, you know, because they use the excuse to, you know, he fits the description, this, that, and the other. You were resisting. They just use that as an excuse to engage a brother. You know, they looking for any excuse under the sun to, you know, kill a brother. You know, in all actuality, they use that resisting card or you fit the description as a excuse to go ahead and kill a brother. I don't rock with that. That's why I go so hard at white supremacy and race soldiers, because white supremacy is a cowardice and weak system. You know, it only preys on the weak or when they got the numbers in their favor. And, you know, you could take the poorest of poor white people and he still got a $1 billion system of white supremacy, you know, of whiteness rather, you know, that he could be poor and he still got the system of racism, white supremacy looking out for coddling and pampering him. You know, he got a welfare system because white supremacists love to talk about black people being on welfare, this, that, or the other, which is a whole myth. You know, in fact, you know, white supremacists is on welfare, you know, more so than any other person. And white supremacists got a welfare system of white supremacy, you know, whenever they caught up in a jam, they can rely on to get them out of it. But let's continue, family. What did I want to touch on? Yeah, family. Over there in Africa, you know, I'm gonna get to some stuff that's going on over there in Africa. You know, they got a ban on, you know, dreadlocks over there in Nigeria, the governor said he wants to put a ban on dreadlocks and, arrest anyone, with that has dreadlocks, and take them into custody, which is a bunch of nonsense. This is why I say that these Africans are so, colonized for the most part. They ain't on code. This is why Africa is over there in disarray because they calling for the arrest of anybody with dreadlocks in Nigeria, but yet they'll sit around and wear them colonial wigs that the white supremacists wore. This is a bunch of nonsense. You know what I mean? This is why they can't get things together because they so looking to get into proximity of the dominant white society to get in bed with white supremacists that, they'll sell their own people up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. You know what I mean? But the one thing I do see that's going on good over there in Africa with the brother uh, Abraham over there in Burkina Faso, he getting the white supremacists up out of there, so they need more people like this Abraham over there in Burkina Faso. I hope I'm pronouncing it right because he's cleaning the white supremacists out. He's paying a lot of their debt back, to ensure that they can keep a lot of their natural resources over there. So I rock with, riders like that, but they got to make sure them Africans over there got to make sure that they looking out for and protecting this man, Abraham of Burkina Faso, because he got a, truth be told, I hate to say it, but he got a bullseye on his back. They looking to take this brother out every moment or chance they get. He got a bullseye on his back from the white supremacists, and they gonna most likely send one of his people to do it. Every time Africa has, or black people in general, even our FBAs, every time we have somebody rise up, to elite status where they got influence over the black community, 9 times out of 10, we see that, they get, people amongst your own ranks to turn on you and sell you up Schitt's Creek without a paddle and stick that dagger in your back when you ain't looking, on behalf of the white power structure. So yeah, they need more riders over there like this brother Abraham over there in Burkina Faso, because this is just, shows you how colonized they are with that dreadlock thing. In Nigeria, the governor's calling to lock up anybody seen with dreadlocks, which is a bunch of nonsense. But yet they'll promote wearing that white supremacist colonizing wig, that they wear. I see a lot of Africans running around wearing them curly hair, blonde, colonial wigs, and then they want to ban dreadlocks. It shows you that, a lot of these people, coming over here, got a colonized mind, and become tethers, and we can't get on code with people like this. They ain't even on code in their homeland, you know what I mean? To be talking some putting a dreadlock ban, it shows you the mindset as of some of these people. And they need more riders like that brother Abraham over there, in Burkina Faso, because he's standing on business, truth to power. Jay Legend. They are accused of something sexual or deleted. Yup. They find anything to, get rid of a brother. And they use those allegations too, like what they doing with Shannon Sharp. Like Shannon Sharp and Diddy, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but they not guilty of a damn thing, other than, only thing Shannon Sharp is guilty of is laying white. He should have never been, laying white, but I don't co-sign, the public lynching of a brother, because that's what they're trying to do to Shannon Sharp now, publicly lynching, you know what I mean? Because when you're black, you're never allowed to, transfer that generational wealth to next generations. And, they destroy all the black prominent elites. They got a track record of that, and Diddy ain't guilty of not a damn thing either. The bulk of Diddy's problem started when he sued that big wig liquor company, Diego, for racism, if you ask me. You know what I mean? Now, Diddy was a freak, don't get me wrong, but that ain't no crime. I don't rock with his lifestyle, but I'm still not going to never co-sign or endorse, public lynching of, black icons or black people in general, because they know if we co-sign this nonsense, they got them. Because when we on the black FBA grassroots give resistance to, them trying to publicly lynch our people, they ain't got them. But they know if we, going along, with the narrative that the mainstream media outlets is pumping out there, and we take up a stance against our people, this is when they know they got them, and they can have their way with them. You know what I mean? But this is why it ain't so easy for them to do this now, because in large part FBAs is waking up and getting on code, and we ain't, publicly letting our own, get lynched in the eyes of the public, and they're not being able to destroy our black prominence and black people in the way in which they wanted it, because if we wouldn't have got behind our brother Carmelo, they would have, never let him out of jail, and he would have never got that money up. But the black FBA grassroots got behind our brother. We were supporting him like, nah, this is self-defense. If Daniel Penny got the right to, defend himself against an innocent black man, which was our brother Jordan Neely, which was just, lashing out because he was hungry and cold on that NYC, subway. And, he choked our brother like a coward from behind, then our brother Carmelo got the right to defend himself when somebody, a white supremacist suspects, in the form of them two brothers, I forget their names, but they came up in our brother's personal space, tried to take his phone or his bag and place hands on him. So he got the right to defend himself. It's those double standards that, we as black people are supposed to just lay there and take stuff from the dominant white society. Damn that. We as black people got the right to defend ourselves, and we got the right to, defend ourselves by any means necessary. You can't say what kind of measures someone should take when their life feels threatened. People going to do whatever the hell they feel they got to do, to make sure that they can go on to live and thrive. So our brother Carmelo Anthony, he was justified in that. That white supremacist, them two brothers shouldn't have never put their hands on our young brother. But I digress. But yeah, basically, they have a long track record of destroying black prominence and black elite people. You know what I mean? So they got to make sure that brother Abraham over there in Burkina Faso is protected. You know what I mean? Because he got a bullseye on his back. And they just so colonized over there in Africa for the most part. Not all the brothers and sisters, not all, just like, not all, immigrants are tethers, just the one that try to come, amongst and speak for our lineage and cosplay as us, and say what we should or what we shouldn't get and try to undermine, our lineage as foundational black Americans. You got some riders over there, but for the most part, that's why they can't get it together, because they got, African leaders like this governor of Nigeria running around putting, trying to, incarcerate people for wearing dreadlocks. That shows you the mindset of these tethers, They can't get it together, because Africa should be one of the richest places on earth, all the natural resources and things they got, but salute to that brother, Abraham, on getting the white supremacists out of there and standing on truth to power. But moving right along. Yeah, family, I gotta move over to YouTube now. I hate to do too much moving around because I'm not all that computer, savvy, technology savvy. But I got some videos on YouTube. Let me jump over from TikTok to YouTube. Some stuff on YouTube I want to talk about. I see. Hopefully y'all can still see me and stuff like that. I ain't messed nothing up. I don't think I did, because I'm not that computer savvy. Come on. History. Here we go, family. Let me let that commercial play. Had to turn the volume down so I don't get copyrighted. Once this commercial's done playing, I'm gonna get into what this video was on. So basically what's going on, family, is, damn, it played another commercial? Crazy. Sometimes they be banging me in my head. They just supposed to play one commercial, play multiple commercials. And don't let you skip once it make you watch the whole commercial. Stop that, bring it back. Okay, family, so now what's happening is it's going to the Supreme Court about, law enforcement making wrong house raids. Should, the law enforcement officers, have to be held accountable for trauma, because a lot of times they break up in people's houses. You traumatize that, innocent family, you break up their things and, rummage through all of their belongings, and you hit the wrong house. And most of the times, they doing it to FBA families, and a lot of FBA brothers and sisters lose their lives behind these wrong house raids. You know what I mean? A lot of FBA brothers and sisters get a bunch of nonsense done to them in these wrong house raids, and And this video is going to show that and depict that, family. And I think that the law enforcement should, be held accountable when they make, wrong house raids on houses, because that's a part of, stupidity and ignorance on the police department's behalf. You're supposed to have everything mapped out and know the right place you hitting before you initiate a raid. So that falls on them. And, they'll learn to get the hint once, they start getting, the police department's insurance agencies start to get sued, and their insurance rates go through the roof, and they start to have, lawsuits put on them by, FBA brothers and sisters that's getting, their houses hit wrongfully, because in this video it's going to show some FBA brothers and sisters who have gotten, their house, wrongly raided, and the police coming up with every excuse under the sun, not to pay them. They bust your door down, this, that, and the other, traumatizing FBA brothers and sisters with this nonsense. And we're going to walk through and talk about this thing how we normally do. But the police department should be held accountable for this nonsense, because a lot of FBA brothers and sisters lose their lives behind these, wrong house raids. But let's continue, family. Fair use.
Imagine a police SWAT team bursting into your home without warning, but then officers realize they have the wrong address. It happens more often than you might think in America. And now the U.S. Supreme Court is deciding whether federal agents can be held liable for those innocent mistakes. In tonight's Prime Focus,
they should be held liable. Like I said, when you enter somebody's house, when you got some kind of intel that somebody doing some illegal activity out of a house, you got to make sure you hit the right house. And police that hit the wrong house, that's negligence on their part and stupidity. The police department should certainly be held accountable. And why I get pushback and resistance to this is they mostly hitting, FBA brothers and sisters' houses in these wrong house raids. I see uptick in this, them going into FBA brothers and sisters' houses, without even knocking or sometimes even addressing themselves. It's a lot of brothers and sisters that die behind this foolishness and nonsense.
ABC's senior Washington reporter Devin Dwyer explores whether families can seek compensation for the physical and emotional harm, or if police are immune.
This body camera video from 2019 captures a dramatic police mistake. Officers bursting into the Chicago home of social worker Anjanette Young as she was changing clothes just after 7 o'clock on a Thursday evening.
What is going on here?
Stunned and bewildered,
That's our FBA sister right there crying. She traumatized. She's saying you got the wrong house. I live alone, and they just burst in there, guns blazing. And truth be told, if this sister would have, made the wrong move, they would have put some hot slugs in her. And I don't respect that, nor do I rock with it. This is why, these damn degenerate race soldiers should be held accountable, because most times they ain't hitting nothing but, black people's houses in these, wrong house raids. So they should be accountable for the pain and suffering, plus all the damages that's occurred when they going into these houses.
she stood naked and handcuffed in her own living room, a victim of police raiding the wrong address.
I couldn't comprehend what was happening. At that moment, I was absolutely afraid for my life. No, 'cause you got the wrong house! At the very end, when they took the handcuffs off me, it was when they said, we believe your story. I'm sorry.
What's the lasting impact it's had?
I've been diagnosed with major depression and PTSD. Time does not cure it. It is.
See, these degenerate race soldiers, acts without thinking, the lack of stupidity on their part caused our sister, with depression. Now she got mental health issues that, she endured, from these degenerate race soldiers coming up in her house. So truth be told, they should be on the hook for this and held accountable, to financially compensate this sister.
Something that you live with, and you have to learn how to manage it.
Chicago police, like most law enforcement agencies, don't keep track of wrong house raids or publicly report data.
Sure, they don't keep track and publicly report data because they're trying to keep, this from getting widespread backlash and sweep it up under the rug.
But a 2023 review by the city's inspector general found at least 21 cases over a 4-year period.
The problem with the Anjanette Young case was the information giving to the officers was fictitious. A paid informant provided fictitious information in order to get money.
That's still the authorities, problem. They got to make sure the intel that they getting when they trying to serve and act on these warrants is true writing his act. They can't, they got to cross all their T's and dot all their I's. So they still on the hook for it, just because, the intel was wrong don't mean that they ain't, still on the hook for compensating this system.
From the police department. When the officers showed up to execute the warrant, they were in the house for seconds before they realized this is bad information. We know we're in the right place. We know we're at the right location. But the information provided to us about criminal activity inside this home is not correct.
You got the wrong information.
Whether bad intelligence or an innocent officer error, the impacts can be severe. An Austin, Texas SWAT team responding to a gunfight blew up the front door of Glenn and Mindy Shields' home, causing thousands of dollars in property damage.
That's white people, they done it too right here, but in large part they doing this to FBA brothers and sisters, and a lot of FBA brothers and sisters has lost their lives due to the police departments, janky procedures, these race soldiers, janky procedures of entering the wrong apartments, you know what I mean? And most of the times it's never brought to the forefront, it's swept under the rug, as to prevent widespread backlash.
We were put in handcuffs in a police car over 2 hours.
The suspect lived across the street. The city denied any wrongdoing and, as is often the case, claimed immunity.
Come on now, keep your hands up.
When cops showed up outside Amy Hadley's home in South Bend, Indiana in 2022,
y'all know I'm a minor, right?
her teenage son emerged with his cell phone on and his hands up.
That's not him.
Cops beginning to question whether the suspect was in the house.
Nobody knows who that is. Nobody's seen him before.
Hadley claims they still launched dozens of tear gas grenades and raided the home anyway. Police later saying they had indications the suspect had posted to Facebook from inside.
Cops are human and they make mistakes. And a lot of times the mistakes that are...
Damn that they human and make mistakes. You in a position like a cop, entering somebody's wrong house, you got to make sure that every precaution under the sun is made to, ensure that you ain't making no mistakes because, most of the times black folks are getting, unjustly, their homes, broken into and, they getting shot and killed, in these wrong police raids where they enter in the wrong house. So damn that, humans make mistakes, but cops being in that type of position, you can't afford to make mistakes because mistakes, result in black people most of the times losing their lives, and, it's just a bunch of nonsense behind this. And the brothers and sisters where they did, enter their house, wrongfully, they deserve to get compensated for that, for their pain and suffering, because it's all kind of, traumas and things that go along with when, you're a law-abiding citizen and, you have the police, enter your house unlawfully, and enter the wrong house at that. But let's continue.
Are being made are because there's not enough due diligence, there's not enough research going into it, and it's the result of it can be devastating for the family impacted.
Ann Jeanette Young sued the city of Chicago and received a nearly $3 million settlement in 2021. But experts say most innocent...
As she should, good to see that sister was, financially compensated. I like that.
Victims of wrong house raids are not compensated for the physical or emotional harm that often results.
Why is it so hard for victims of...
It's hard for them, brothers and sisters to get compensated when the police wrongfully come up in your house because, the white supremacist system we under works to protect these race soldiers, and you got to have, a certain amount of money to be able to take like these kinds of things to even bring them in, front of a judge. You got to have money, truth be told, and everybody ain't got that kind of money. So unfortunately, a lot of these cases, it's probably more than what's being reported that black folks get this kind of nonsense done to them. But oftentimes, our people might not be in, a point in life where they can, be able to fight this thing because it costs money to be able to even fight. That's why most times you get, brothers get janky charges put on them, in the system of racism, white supremacy. They throw bogus charges on a brother, but a brother, bogus drug charges or something like that, they might throw on a brother, janky charges, but a brother got to, take a plea because he might not got all the money to financially fight out that case, So a lot of the times, people, just, cop and, cop the things, and don't got the money to fight it even when they in the right.
police mistakes to seek justice in court.
So police not only have things like qualified immunity to protect them, but in a case where the police work for the federal government, they have entire doctrines.
The police got a whole system to protect them. This is why 9 times out of 10 they get away with doing janky, white supremacist, race soldier activity to black folks.
That effectively act like federal immunity.
For Trina Martin, her son Gabe, and Toy Client, the nightmare began with an FBI flashbang grenade exploding in the living room of their Atlanta home.
I thought someone was breaking in, and it was so chaotic that I thought they had a mission, and the mission was to kill.
To another story, family, that ties into this whole thing with, these wrong house raids, you know what I mean? Because that one was kind of long. I think this sister might also be in my next story that I'm going to show you with these wrong house raids. They was actually traumatized by this nonsense. I think this actually might be the same sister. I'm not 100 on that. Don't hold me on that, though.
We've got about 50 million followers. We're in the bill.
I can't pronounce your name. Keziah. Peace, family, to you. I don't want to chop and screw your name, but peace, family.
Millions of views. And we're a small team. We always felt like
5 in the morning, I was...
Your home is your castle, but in 2017, Trina Martin, her son Gabe, who was 7 at the time, and her partner, Toy Cliat, had that sense of security shattered by a flash bomb grenade that signaled the start of an FBI raid.
It was...
Yeah, late. That is that same sister. I was right. I think her name was Trina Martin, in that last segment. And this is the same sister. Her and her family, had one of these wrong house raids done on them, and it traumatized the whole family behind this nonsense. You got to think, you breaking up into somebody's a decent tax-paying citizen's house, not announcing yourself, breaking down the door, people half asleep, you coming in there, rummaging through all of their stuff, sure this would, bring on some kind of, mental trauma and anguish, so these people, are people that's getting this done to them, the FBA family, they deserve to be compensated because, most of the times we see that, it's only being done to our people. But let's continue.
Morning, I'll say between 4:35 in the morning, I was asleep, and all of a sudden I hear a lot of banging, bang, bang, bang.
I was asleep. The bang was so loud and so abrupt. I just remember landing on my feet out of the bed. It startled me.
Toy grabbed Trina and brought her to shelter in a...
You don't know what's going on. Place yourself in this family's shoes, family. You sleep, police come into your house, unlawfully breaking up into the wrong house. You don't know if somebody coming to rob you, kill you. They waking you up from a sound, sleep. So this is why they deserve to be compensated. This thing should hit the Supreme Court, and these law enforcement agencies, should be held accountable for this, because they'll learn once the insurance companies of, these police departments, start making them pay more, because that's the only way you hurt, white supremacists in the system of racism, white supremacy, is you hit them in the pockets, because the only thing they respect is money, control, and power. And let's continue.
Closet where he armed himself while Gabe cowered beneath his blanket in another.
The family Keziah said, I would have been terrified. Yeah, me too. You don't know, somebody coming and breaking up into your home, are they coming to kill you? What are they coming to do? You don't know what on God's green earth these people are coming up in there for. And half of the times I seen videos where them busting up into brothers and sisters' houses. You don't know, they not even announcing themselves. They cover the peephole, step to the side, They just do a whole bunch of janky nonsense, these, police departments. And you only see it being done with FBA brothers and sisters in large part. Yeah, you might have some exceptions to the rules, but in large part, they just doing this to FBA brothers and sisters. This is why I get pushed back to white supremacy and these no good race soldiers.
Another bedroom, but there was no hiding place.
It was like 2 guns pointed in my face at like one time. So I was just nervous. That was my main focus. Like, I didn't want to get...
And he's older now. He's still a young brother, but I don't know if y'all caught it earlier on in the segment. They said he was 7 years old. He just said they pointed guns at him. Pointing guns at a 7-year-old? You can't make that make sense. Where the hell they do that at?
Killed that, my safety came first at that moment.
So they pulled me out of the closet, walked me through the bathroom, and then they threw me on the floor in the bedroom.
Nah.
I remember being on the floor, and I'm looking up to see what...
Seeing a white supremacist mindset, they walk around with these false narratives that all black people are guilty of something, got to be guilty of some crime just because they black, which is a bunch of nonsense.
What's going on? And I see a bunch of like automatic weapons pointed at me, and I'm like, oh man.
Trina, Toy, and Gabe had no idea why they'd been targeted. Then, as quickly as it began, the nightmare was over.
They said we're moving down the road.
They don't even got the decency to say sorry, nothing. We just moving down the road after they done broke up in somebody's home, rummaged through their things, treated them like the common average criminal, had guns in a 7-year-old face. That's a bunch of nonsense. Sue the pants off of these individuals because you got to hit them where it hurts. Once the police departments, insurance agencies start and they insurance policies start going through the roof, they get the hint to stop, doing this nonsense to FBA society.
So when they realized they had the wrong house, it was no remorse. It was just like, everybody rally up and let's just go to the right house.
I caught that. We got the wrong house. Let's go right on down the street. No sorry, no remorse whatsoever. It shows you that they don't give a damn because they really don't. When a person shows you who they are, believe them. And the only way you can hurt white supremacists is hitting them in the pockets.
Encounter left the family traumatized.
We found ourselves looking out of the window.
Peace and big shout out to all of the family tapping in with me, all of the family watching, the people that commented, thanks for rocking with me. Make sure you like and subscribe because, they try to suppress my content. So, the algorithm can get my content out there, family, because I notice when I'm coming with this Black FBA empowerment, they work to censor me, and they, signal boost, the foolish mushmouth Negroes out here, running around talking white supremacy don't exist. Nonsense, slavery didn't exist, Harriet Tubman didn't exist, Martin Luther King sold us out. I talked about that earlier, so watch the live stream broadcast, from the beginning when I get on these mushmouth Negroes about, them playing in the white supremacist, hands, because in a white supremacist society, they love mushmouth Negroes running around like that. In fact, they'll signal boost their message. So just, make sure if you're rocking with me, family, you give the content a like and, share it on your social media too. Thanks, family. Thanks for rocking with me, but let's get back into this.
Windows a lot after the raid. Again, we're just trying to see things before it happened. We felt unsafe. We were going to see a lot of therapists.
In the wake of the Wrong House raid, the trio tried to sue the government for compensation under the Federal Tort Claims Act. However, the case was dismissed on the grounds that the agents had sovereign immunity, meaning they couldn't be held liable for their actions while doing their official duty.
They can't be held liable. That's a system of racism, white supremacy looking out for these race soldiers. And I'm going to talk about this later, but, Trump is trying to give the police more immunity, added insulated protection to run amok. I don't respect that, nor do I rock with it. You know what I mean? This is why I ain't for either party. Instead, I'm for, complete and total FBA empowerment. But, this family deserves to be compensated. But let's continue.
The case is now headed to the Supreme Court.
They shouldn't get away with this, and we shouldn't be dismissed, and it shouldn't be swept underneath the carpet. So that's.
I agree, but these cases like this are these wrong, House raids. They're going to, start being brought in front of the Supreme Court now, and I think they should because they should be liable. You enter somebody's house, wrongfully, because they got a proven track record of doing this, to FBA families left and right, and a lot of times brothers and sisters is losing their lives behind this nonsense. So hopefully, the Supreme Court, rules in favor of the police, having to be held accountable. But let's move right along from that. What else did I want to get into? Yeah, we're going to get into the Trump thing right now. Let me go to my TikTok. Hopefully it don't make me log in. TikTok, I don't know, for some strange reason, every time I'm on my phone, it's good, but every time I try to come on my laptop, it wants to try to make me log in, start from scratch. I hate that. It kicks me out for some reason.
Turns out being invisible is such a terrifying experience.
Yep.
The experiment.
They did it. Damn. No, I'm in. Okay, I'm in. I'm good, money. Let me get to my page. Family, if you haven't followed me on FBA Rebald over here on my TikTok, I had upwards of like 5,000, followers over here. And they hacked my page, and that was, not no coincidence. It was done by design. We know what that's about. But here we go. This Trump thing. I want y'all to listen to Trump's words. I couldn't find the actual whole news segment because I wanted to break it down, but it's coming out of the horse's mouth, so can't nobody say he didn't say it. So, I'm just going to talk about the little snippet I got of, the nonsense Trump is co-signing and endorsing. Come on. There we go. Damn, it went too far. What the hell? There we go.
Safety and defend our community.
Listen to this nonsense, family. What Trump is basically, he's weaponizing the police, giving them more added insulated protection, offering them pay increases, and he says he wants to unleash, more officers in the high, in this, in it calls for, unleashing more officers in the cities that are supposed high impact crime areas, and in this particular thing he's saying that this particular news snippet, he's saying that African Americans, meaning us foundational Black Americans, we're calling for more police presence in our communities, which we're not. Instead of you trying to bring more police into the FBA community, why don't you take all of these damn police and put them where they need it, out there where all of these suspected white supremacists in these damn trailer parks, is getting high and selling meth. Put them out there. Don't bring them into the Black community because, in large part, we got, things going on in the Black community, but, we ain't got nothing going on that other communities don't got going on, but these other communities got them, going on more so than what we got going on in the Black community. They got more crime than us. The Black community's crime is, just propagated more, and they add more icing on the cake in favor of, demonizing us and, letting white supremacists run amok. So we ain't asking for no, added police presence, because if you ask me, the so-called Black on Black crime that they saying crimes being done in the Black community, it's being added to, they inflating it, the numbers as to, put a negative spotlight on Black society, in favor of what they always do of making the white supremacist society, look clean, and, they going about things lawfully. So up the presence in these damn trailer parks, where people getting high and selling meth and out there running amok. We ain't asking for no, added, more added police protection, in the Black community, because the Black community, we ain't doing all that bad. We ain't got nothing that no other community got, ain't got. It's just that, things is propagated and weaponized against, us more, in favor of the news get out here and, put a negative spotlight on the Black community. And this is done, this ain't no coincidence. It's done by design, and Trump, just doing this, what I think he's doing this as, running it under the guise as, Black people want to add it, police presence. He's doing this to, use this as a means to stop and frisk brothers and sisters, because that's all they're going to be doing is, you fit the description, harassing brothers, going, up in brothers' pockets, detaining brothers, just, feeling they got a free pass to run amok, So take this damn, added police presence and put it out there in a white trailer park, where you got them dirt poor white people selling each other meth and, getting high till they blue in the face. But I got the audio and the video of this nonsense, family, and we're going to walk through and talk about it how we normally do. Fair use.
For law-abiding American citizens, we need, look, the crime is most rampant right here and in African American communities, and more people see me and they see.
You hear what he said? The crime is more rampant in African American communities, and this is done by design. They inflate the number of so-called crime in the Black community. Everybody commits, crime, against their own community, sadly and unfortunately. And we as Black folks, aren't immune to that. Sure, we got some, riffraffs and degenerates in Black society, like every society got, but our numbers are just, inflated more, and this is used as an excuse to target, and racially profile, black people in black communities. Police come in there, and just stop and frisk brothers. And this is all Donald Trump is trying to do, give them immunity to where though they come in there, hem brothers up left and right at the drop of a dime. This is why I ain't pro-Trump. I don't rock with Trump and I don't rock with the Democrats, but rather I'm for black empowerment. True black empowerment, revolves around none of these particular parties, the right side or the left side, because they both branches off the same tree, both birds of a feather. But let's continue.
Sir, we want protection.
Peace to my brother RASX. Facts, shaking my head. Scapegoat, shaking my head. I got a lot of the crime and the done to lack of resources and poverty. Of the crime is done due to, yeah, I get you, RASX. I get you because, I get right what you're saying. Most of the crime, the so-called crime, I'm gonna call it so-called because, it's inflated more, when it comes to black society, FBA society, most of our crimes are done because of lack of resources, jobs, money being circulated in that community. So, I'm not saying it's right, but, some brothers get out there and sell some drugs, but that ain't nothing that ain't going on in every society, but you just inflate, to where though you put a negative spotlight on black society in favor of, making the white society's hands look clean. And I don't rock with that whole narrative. This right here ain't going to be nothing but an excuse for Trump to come in and, have these race soldiers running amok in, black society. This is why I get pushback to Trump, because Trump ain't nothing more than a white supremacist, truth be told. He ain't no friend of black society.
We want police to protect us. We don't want to get robbed and mugged and beat up or killed because we want to walk across the street to buy a loaf of bread. They want it.
Now he's trying to make it look like black folks are saying we don't want to get jumped, beat up, robbed, and we want to be able to walk across the street and get a loaf of bread. Black people ain't saying this. Trump is just putting icing on the cake in favor of, making it look like, we in FBA society want added insulated protection in the black community, which we don't. The black community just fine, and we'd be better off if, white supremacists keep their nose out of our business and affairs. But let's continue.
So badly. The fake news doesn't talk about it. But the black population wants.
Yeah, family. KEZ. I can't pronounce your name, and I don't want to chop and screw it. But yeah, these are the same people that flooded our community with drugs, and was bringing about AIDS in the black community, because I believe they manufactured AIDS in the black community too. But I don't want to go too deep as to get the live suppressed, because when you start talking too much truth to power, they come in and censor it. Won't be letting the live be recommended. GAWDLY, we know we are saying it. You really need to understand we have no clue who is walking around us. I don't know what you mean by that, but we know what's going on, in terms of Trump. He's trying to push a negative agenda in favor of, him bringing all these, police into the black community and weaponizing them as if they ain't already got added insulated protection. They don't need no damn more added insulated protection. It's we as, the FBA community and black society as a whole that need the added insulated protection. This is why we need that black hate crimes bill, quick, fast, and in a hurry, because with him running around doing nonsense like this, the police gonna have a field day with this and think, they got every excuse under the sun to detain and be harassing black brothers and sisters. I don't rock with this whole thing. You know what I mean? And he's just putting out a false narrative that we as black people want, added insulation in our community, in the form of law enforcement. We don't want no damn law enforcement, added law enforcement presence in our community. We'd be just fine, better off than we are now, if the white supremacists keep their nose out of black society's business and affairs.
Law enforcement more than any other population. So
yeah, this is a bunch of nonsense right here. What I think Trump should do, instead of minding FBA society's business and affairs, and trying to bring more police into the black community, and he's talking about giving them pay increases, better perks and tangibles, you know, for the police officers. Instead of him doing that, why don't you take them out and put them in them suburban areas and them trailer parks where white supremacists is getting high on meth and selling each other meth, running around beating each other upside the head with beer cans and stuff like that, you know. Miss me with that, you know, but moving right along. Yeah, I believe all of that was manufactured too. GAWDLY, as you know, a weapon against our community, the black community. But yeah, moving right along, I want to get into something I seen from our good brother Ali. You know, this was very impactful right here. You know, I took a lot from it. I'm like, I'm gonna share this with the family.
Shit while I wrote this shit.
I'm like, I'm gonna share this with the family. Once I seen this, one of my friends shared it over here on TikTok. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna share this. Yeah, because I got a lot out of it. I'm like, I'm sure if I got something out of it, the family could get something out of it. Come on. Here we go.
Style like Joe Frazier.
Okay, family. So this is, you know, brother Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. You know, they kept it real in this. They dropped a lot of truth to power, and they show how the white supremacist society, like white supremacists, they come in black society and sow seeds of dissension. You know, most times, 9 times out of 10, you know, white supremacists, you know, when they want to get some kind of harm done to black society, they'll, you know, use people amongst your own ranks to carry out, they devilish and wicked deeds, you know, like they'll get, you know, people in your organization, other black people to, you know, unalive other black people, and they sow seeds of dissension, which goes back to the COINTEL program, you know, where they were using, you know, other black people to infiltrate black organizations, you know, such as William O'Neill infiltrating the Black Panthers. You know, whenever white supremacists, you know, society want to do something, they'll sit in the cut, lay in the cut, and sow the seeds of dissension and get another brother to come along. I wouldn't even call them brothers, but they'll get another black person, you know, to come along and, you know, sow seeds of dissension and sell you up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. And here, you know, brother Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier were on a talk show. I think this was the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s. I don't know the time frame, but basically they were on a talk show, and, you know, they were going back and forth with the words, you know, clowning on one another, you know, and speaking on one another, you know, all harmless fun, you know. But, you know, the white supremacist, suspected white supremacist who was the talk show host, he tried to, you know, throw in some, you know, salt in the game and sow the seeds of dissension, how, you know, typically white supremacist society do, you know, saying, well, oh, he said this about you, he said that about you, to just get in each other's ear to pit 2 black people against one another. But, you know, Muhammad Ali rather and Joe Frazier were on code. They peeped the nonsense out, and they actually exposed and called the suspected white supremacists out on his nonsense, you know, and said, you know, when you black, you know, like basically whatever differences you got, you know, when you come in a room of white supremacy, we keep that for a later time. And that's how black society as a whole, we have to start conducting ourselves. Yeah, we might have little disagreements, petty arguments and disputes, you know, amongst our people, you know, that we have, but we keep that for, you know, inside of black society. We keep that, you know, in closed areas and closed rooms where only we around. When we get into, you know, coming around the dominant white society, we appear to be on code, even if we not, you know, because white supremacist society, they come in and sow seeds of dissension, you know, everything, you know, going back to the COINTEL program. They was calling, you know, Dr. Martin Luther King's wife, you know, saying that he cheated on him, trying to get some riffraff started with him and his wife. You know, they just do a bunch of nonsense, try to split up black families and pit black people, you know, against one another. But our brother Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier stayed completely on code. And this was a teaching lesson here, how to conduct yourself when you're in the presence of the dominant white society. Even if you don't see eye to eye with your brother in the presence of white folks, you keep that for, you know, a later time, you know, in the confines of black society. But in front of the dominant white society, we appear to be on code at any and all times, you know. But let's, you know, get into this video, family. Fair use.
You'll never see Joe Frazier jabbing and faking and backing up and moving aside.
Oh man, you got a surprise coming. You got a surprise coming. You wait till 28.
How you gonna teach old dog new tricks? How you gonna learn some new tricks?
You call him an old dog.
Well,
No, you are still agitating. I didn't say that.
No, he called you. I heard it. Didn't he say it?
See, he said this. Muhammad Ali said, I didn't say that. You sticking words in this brother's mouth. And, even though this white talk show host is appearing to play around, it's secretly some white supremacy lying under that, because this is a historical play in the white supremacist handbook, trying to sow seeds of dissension among two brothers. And before you know it, you done successfully, drove in a wedge in between these two brothers. And you got these brothers going at one another. And while you sitting back in the cut and, watching it unfold. This is how white supremacist society, truth be told, gets their rocks off. They orchestrate, division amongst black people, and they sit, behind the scenes. Yeah, I got the Negros. I got them right where I want them, laughing and skinning and grinning, because in all actuality, you doing the work, for white supremacist society and going at your brother.
What you mean a dog? You didn't call me a dog, so you can't teach
He
dog.
said an old dog, new tricks. He calls you a bear half the time.
He
told me at the camp that you sleep with a teddy bear in your bed. Now, I don't make these things up,
That's what he said.
This guy tells me this.
Let's be friends for 1 minute just to get him.
No, come on. Please, come on. No, come on. No,
my brother. Look at him trying to up.
Let's show him.
You know what he was trying to do. Our good brother, FBA brother, Muhammad Ali, and Joe Frazier was on code. Our FBA brother, Joe Frazier, was on code on this one too. But our good brother, Muhammad Ali, he knew how to discern white supremacy. He was on constant codification, and here he knew what the white supremacists, suspected white supremacists, was up to, the gameplay he was trying to run.
What time is it?
Let me tell you something. Oh, no. Let me tell you something.
Wait, can I say something?
Listen to this, family. Muhammad Ali about to break it down and speak truth to power. He about to stand on business right here. Listen what he says.
Let me tell you something. I want to tell you one thing. All of the brothers out there watching television, I don't care how mad y'all at each other, when it's come to one of these fellas trying to divide us, we must unite.
Basically said what I said. Even if we not on code together, in the secret confines of FBA society, when we get in front of the dominant white society, when a white person tries to come between us, we unite and we stay on code. Even if we not on code, we talk about our business, in FBA society behind closed doors. So I just wanted to share that and bring it to the forefront and put it up under the light and share it with the family. And I'm getting ready to get off of here, family. I just didn't want to be on here too long, but I had to do the normal Saturday tap in with the family. And, make sure you like, share, and subscribe my content, family, because they trying to heavily suppress the message, because whenever you come with a unapologetically FBA message, they'll work to suppress it, because they don't want no real black empowerment getting out there. So make sure y'all have a good and safe weekend out there, family. Enjoy your family, friends, and loved ones. And thanks for everyone, for coming in the comments, commenting, whoever commented on my videos, and thanks for being a part of the live stream. And remember to be aware, family, and stay safe, because to be aware is to be alive. Just my thoughts on the matter. Peace, family.